You recognize there's a difference between that word and the word cracker, right?
Yeah, a little
Like,
C word.
Or so you say that there's a difference between that word and the word cracker, yet you don't
C
seem
word,
to
please.
acknowledge...
It's TOS, man. It's TOS. They're
I
cracking
know,
down
I
on
know.
people.
I imagine you'd be okay with it if it wasn't TOS. It's just so goofy. Like insults, cracker specifically meaning whip cracker, referring to the slave trade.
Come on, C word, man. It's
Oh
not
my
that
god!
hard.
I wish it wasn't. I'm like literally forgetting all the time. C word, C word, C word, C word.
Do you think that black people were cool with white people calling them Uncle Toms?
I have an understanding that most black people think it's acceptable to use the word Uncle Tom.
So then you'd be cool with like white people saying the N-word as long as they've gotten the pass from like a lot of their black friends.
Like,
Hey, we could shake hands on that. Because I don't think anybody should be using it, so that's a W. I got a couple black people in chat. Throw it up if you don't want this white guy using Uncle Tom. Are you ready? Did you push the button and you did the thing? It should be good to go. Hello. Are you there? Can't hear you. You're muted.
Oh.
Yeah, hi.
Please tell me you can hear me now.
Now I can. You have to
Please tell me you can hear me now.
I can. Can you mute my stream? You have it up?
Oh, there we go. Oh yeah, let's mute the stream. There we go.
Alright, you can hear me, right?
Alright. Yeah, just let me turn it up. You're a little quiet.
Okay.
There you go. So what's up?
Alright, you said some shit. It's a very simple claim that I was making that, okay, I'm getting feedback. You have to, like, do push to talk or lower the sensitivity
I'll do push
of your
to talk.
mic.
1 sec.
Are you good now? Hello?
I should be good to go now.
Okay. Alright. So, I made a claim that it is the people that are advocating that we should be able to use the C word against white people that are arguing essentially to put white people in a position where they could be reasonably or feel reasonably oppressed. That if people are around you feel it is justified to call you a racial slur or a derogatory term about your race, that group of people would reasonably feel oppressed and justify the oppression narrative that, weirdly enough, people are saying is justified by not saying the C word. And so, yeah, I think it's really hypocritical. And you had a big issue with that. What is your problem with that?
So, sorry, I'm using space. Now I'm getting a bunch of stuff. My question, I guess, for you is, like, do you feel that it is actually oppressive? Because what I got from the stream, which I responded to, was you saying that you are oppressing someone by calling them a racial slur if they're white. Do you actually believe that's the case?
I would say derogatory term of a group of people and normalizing that, not just using it, but normalizing it and saying it's okay. You're on, your shit's going off. They're static. Normalizing the use of a derogatory term about somebody's race is oppressive. Yes.
Okay. Just out of curiosity, where do you consider yourself on like the political spectrum and
I'm
like
a social democrat.
Yeah, social
I would
democrat.
consider myself far left on. I would consider myself extremely far left on social issues.
Okay, cool. Then I think we probably would agree on a lot. Like, firstly, like you would agree that like race is a social construct, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. And like, so we recognize that there's no biological basis in race, all that, blah blah blah, right?
Yeah.
With that, there's also the understanding that like racism was a structure put in place literally to use against people of color, and the way that we define race has a few different definitions, right? So like whiteness on its own can and often is defined as the exclusion of other races, and that boundary shifts depending on the day and who we consider to be like degenerate or like Aryan or whatever, right? Like these kinds of ideals shift depending on who's in vogue and who has money and power and all that, right?
Okay.
And so what we have from that is the idea of white being an exclusionary race. Literally the idea, like, and I'm a white person,
Sure.
don't get me wrong, but it literally requires the exclusion of others. And
Yeah.
so I come from an understanding that is we need to abolish the idea of whiteness. So the abolition of whiteness being the abolition of systems that keep white people in power.
Sure. Yeah. By the way, it's far better to say abolition of white supremacy. Abolition of whiteness is unnecessarily volatile. It's optically dumb.
Do you think that terms like white guilt are optically dumb as well then? Or like how do you feel
No,
about
not
stuff like that?
necessarily. I'd say there's a lot of people showing white guilt, like Hassan and Vaush in this instance, like trying to push back against like the I'm one of the good whites in this situation. They're just being cringe, honestly.
Yeah, I can see why you'd feel they're being cringe. I think that I understand specifically, I don't know Vaush very well, but I understand Hassan's position, like why defending Cracker and defending
Please
like
just
the
refer
usage
to
of
it as
Cracker.
the C word. I don't want to get banned.
Oh, sorry. I'll use the C word for your stream. So yeah, using the C word, I guess. Um,
Yep.
sorry, I'm getting distracted just by saying that. So using the C word, I don't know Vosh's stance on it, but I do understand Hassan's stance. Hassan's stance being that fighting and banning people over using the term or using C word uh, is defending white identity politics, which I actually do agree with. Defending white identity politics is not something that I think that we should be doing. I think that we should be pushing back against white identitarianism and the concept that what would I say, like that whiteness is like something
Do you
that you.
Sure, can I step in with that?
Yeah, of course. Go ahead.
Do you agree that there are some things that are bad to do that white identitarians might also consider bad to do?
I mean, sure. There's always going to be there's always going to be
Okay,
some overlap.
do you think one of those things is to be derogatory towards the race of white people? That white identitarians don't like derogatory messaging about white people, and that maybe a good thing to do would be to not be derogatory towards white people, but instead white supremacy, which is not intrinsic to white people, and a black person can be white supremacist, Asian person could be a white supremacist. White supremacy is not intrinsic to being white. A white person doesn't have to be a white supremacist, right? So what is the issue with attacking white supremacy instead of just literally the color of somebody's skin and catching like Bernie Sanders in the fucking crossfire, whoever in the fucking crossfire?
Well, I guess that comes down to the understanding that whiteness isn't like it's not a straight definition. Like for example, yeah, Bernie Sanders is a white man, obviously. I don't think I would, and you know my stance, I wouldn't get too heated over calling Bernie Sanders a C word, even though I think it's silly, right? Like obviously he's doing a lot more for people of color than any fucking like even me and like you or like any other
Sure.
like general person, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like it would be silly to call him that, but I don't think it's that offensive.
Okay, it's not about whether or not it's that offensive. It's about whether or not it's bad or wrong to do. When you could instead just point out white supremacy instead of attacking somebody on the basis of their race. My point is, so you saying that it defends white identitarians, I don't care. I don't care if that's the way that you view it. If white identitarians agree with the idea we shouldn't be racist against white people, this is crazy, but I agree. I know that's a wild thing to do. Perhaps that's wrong of me to be of that position. I don't believe in this idea that I have to be against every single last thing that somebody stands for because they're on the opposite side of the political spectrum, even in as far away as you can get from where I am. It just
Can I
doesn't
ask you
matter.
a question here? How do you feel about like anti-fascism and stuff like that?
I would consider myself anti-fascist, so I have a pretty favorable view of it.
Okay, and so do you think that calling people Nazis is unacceptable as well? Like when they do
No,
Nazi
if they fit the bill, but that has nothing to do with an immutable characteristic. Look at that drift.
What?
I'm sorry, my stream. Look at that fucking drift. All right, go on. Keep going.
Sorry. Yeah. Sorry. What was I saying?
You were I said that being a Nazi doesn't have to do with an immutable characteristic, but being white is an immutable characteristic. Therefore, I have no issue with attacking somebody for being a Nazi.
Right. Okay. Personally, I don't see white as an immutable characteristic. As we already discussed, it is a line that shifts based off of the time, like based off of the era that you're in. There's a reason why there's white Latinos now.
Okay.
Not
So then,
white.
how does Bernie Sanders become not white right now?
Well, first off, I would argue that he's already doing things to abolish whiteness, like
That's
abolish
not
white
what I
supremacy.
asked, though.
Like,
What makes him not white? So Bernie Sanders does X, and then boom, he's no longer white. Like, what does he do, and how does that work?
it's a boundary that shifts over time. You can't just do it in an instant, right?
Hold on. I know the concept of whiteness and who fits within it has changed over time, and it's even different in depending on the culture that you're in currently. However, that doesn't mean that you can just stop being white if you do X or Y action. That our concept of whiteness, right, in regards to how we use it culturally in America, you can't do something to stop becoming white. For instance, what I can do to stop becoming a Nazi is stop supporting fascism. You can't do something similar for being white. You just have to hope that people no longer view you as white. You don't do anything. You hope that other people do something. And by that logic, by the way, what you just described, the same thing could apply for black people as well. Certain people were considered not dark-skinned enough. Certain people were considered black. Certain people were considered brown. And so couldn't you say that me discriminating against black and brown people isn't discriminating against an immutable characteristics because race is a social construct and is ever evolving and changing by that same exact logic you just described?
but your logic doesn't take into context power and oppression either. Like you just made a whole thing about like my understanding of this isn't limited strictly to that one tenet of like of sorry, you spoke what can you repeat the last like three things you said?
Sure. The last three things that I said is essentially your point was that the you can stop being white because in the past we have changed and redefined what it means to be white. My point was that if this was true, and therefore off of that you said that it is not an immutable characteristic to be white. The same thing applies to being black. Being black has changed over time. What groups have been considered black and what groups are considered not black. Really black or light-skinned black. The one drop and stuff like this has changed over time, right? There are some people that are considered mixed that would not be considered black, right? But in the olden days, if you were at all like not fucking like as pale as a bathtub, you were, brown and dirty. So if this is the case, that what it means to be brown and black has changed over time, how is it that I can against black or brown people if and have it be discrimination against an immutable characteristic? It's not an immutable characteristic. Being black and brown has changed, so therefore I wouldn't be discriminating against something that can't change.
Well, then that would make the immutable characteristic argument like basically both ways. What you're saying, if you agree with a shifting boundary, then it's not an immutable characteristic either way, right? So we're not attacking someone on an immutable characteristic, or we are. So either way, my argument was lacking because it doesn't address power and oppression as well. So you're right. My argument wasn't.
So
good
hold on. So then we are no longer then talking about whether or not it's a mutable characteristic from your point of view. Because I disagree. I think if the definition changes from an outside perspective, that doesn't mean it's not an immutable characteristic. Let me give you an example. Can I make fun of fat people? Is that an immutable characteristic?
You're right. No, that's not an immutable characteristic.
Okay. What about short people?
That is.
That's not an immutable characteristic. Because what is defined as short has changed over time. So even though you can't change it, you understand where you're at with this, right? You can't change how tall you are, but what is short has changed over time, so therefore it wouldn't be an immutable characteristic. So my question to you would be, what is an immutable characteristic?
No, I think we can agree that the definition of whether or not something is a slur or acceptable based off of whether or not we're attacking immutable characteristics is, if depending on how you define immutable characteristics, it's like wishy-washy. We don't have a clear answer, right?
No, it's pretty clear. If you the underlying thing that you are appealing to is unchangeable by the person, not the social construct, but but even still, you could say the social construct is unchangeable by the individual, which is true. Let's say, as a short man, cannot change that what is the definition of short. Everybody else has to do that, and I'm beholden to the society I'm in. Same goes for black, same goes for white. I could hope that, let's say I'm Italian people aren't considered white anymore, so I can stop having white people on Twitter call me racial slurs. I could hope that, but at the end of the day, I'm beholden to other individuals with more power, or people who are culturally dominant, to choose that over me. And therefore, I think it should be protected. They have no choice. Right. They have no say. You don't get to choose what race you are. You, at best, are beholden to the people around you.
I do agree with you on that point, that you're right, that a trait is made immutable based off of how it's defined and not whether or not you can, whether or not it changes. I get what you're saying, and I agree with you. So then I would like to talk about the power and the historic context of those words.
Sure.
As well.
So let's then drill this down. So in your mind, it's not about attacking an immutable characteristic. That doesn't matter. Because if it does matter, then you have to deal with the fact that you are attacking somebody on the basis of an immutable characteristic, which I principally stand against. I don't attack people because they're short, tall, fat, or even still with being overweight. You technically can do something about being overweight, but it just meets my merit for being incredibly difficult to do, that I put it in a pretty similar bin to immutable characteristic.
Wait. I'm sorry. So you think that just based off of it being an immutable characteristic intrinsically makes it something that you shouldn't?
Yeah. Why would... Yeah, can you define something more shitty to do than to assault somebody for something they can never do anything to change? Yeah, okay. That's an unbelievably garbage human being thing to do, yes. You are a trash person if you are doing that. Something that somebody cannot change and you're making them feel bad about that? That's like suicide stuff that people do. Like, people commit suicide over that shit. There's nothing they can do about that in
over being called white, dude. Come on.
Well, no. Hold on. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is making people feel bad. If we normalize behavior that's like, yeah, fuck it, white person, your feelings about like your skin color are not valid, and we normalize this kind of behavior of just shitting on white people, I could see white people at the very least starting to feel bad about being white. We just talked about how white guilt exists. We know there are white people that feel bad about being white. And if we said, good, you should feel bad about this, you're never going to escape that you're a white piece of shit. That's pretty bad. That's a bad thing to do. What we should be doing is like, hey, listen, you may be white, but you know what? You can do a lot of good. You got some white privilege. Let's put it to good use. Give the thumbs up.
Ahrelevant, can I ask you a question here? Do you ever insult people by calling them dumb or idiotic or use any...
I do. Yep.
Yeah. So you do. And you recognize that those terms are tied to intrinsic qualities and are tied back to ableism, right?
I don't agree with the idea that it's an intrinsic quality. I usually
those are words that were used specifically for categorizing.
I know they were used. People. The question is whether or not they are used. That's the more important thing. So like another example of this is, personally, I use the N-word. I am black. Do you know the way that was used versus the way that it is used? I think that things can change the way that people use them. And then those words can change, in my opinion, like how you can, whether or not they're ethical to be used into the future. I think things can change their ethical nature.
For a white person to say the N-word?
Very reasonably, it could be, yeah. If we reclaim the N-word to be like just a form of camaraderie, and it gets super, super normalized for sure. Especially if you're talking about the soft A. Yeah, 100%. I could see the soft A being used by like white people within a couple decades easily.
Yeah, I don't know. I have a hard time seeing that, honestly, just given the historical quality of that word. And I do honestly think that you have a shifting, like from what I see from hearing what you say, your boundary shifts on whether or not a word is an attack on an immutable quality. Like, it just...
How
it
does my
doesn't really
boundary
add up.
shift? What do you... Oh, wait, are you talking about... Wait, hold on.
I'm talking
What-
about, like,
okay.
the ableist slurs that you're willing to use
Okay, so then...
over,
wait.
like...
Yeah, why is it okay to attack somebody for something they can't change?
I'm asking you why you still consider it okay to use ableist slurs. Like, you seem to think that it's okay to use
Well,
those
because
slurs.
I legitimately believe... I don't believe that you can't get smarter.
It's literally an immutable characteristic, right?
No, I don't think it is. I think you can become more intelligent.
Okay,
Like,
but
I'm not talking about, like, IQ. I'm not a bell curve kind of dude if you're trying to get me on that. Like, what I'm saying is, like, you're uneducated about how philosophy works. Maybe your dumb ass should go read about some philosophy. Yeah,
Hey, dude.
I think that's fine.
Okay, but you know, like, the origin of the word idiot, for example, right?
Yeah, I know the origin of it, of course. I know the origin of a lot of these words are ableist in nature, yes.
And like, the word idiot was used to put people in institutions where they would torture them, put them in abhorrent, disgusting situations. So you're willing to use that word. You recognize there's a difference between that word and the word cracker, right?
Yeah, a little
Like,
C word, but...
Or sorry,
yeah.
you recognize there's a difference between... Or sorry, you say that there's a difference between that word and the word cracker, yet you don't
C
seem
word,
to
please.
acknowledge...
Sorry,
Oh,
it's TOS, man. It's TOS. They're
I
cracking
know,
down
I know.
on people.
I imagine you'd be okay with it if it wasn't TOS. It's just so goofy. Fucking Twitch. Because, like, I can say the word idiot. I could even probably throw an R slur in there if I really wanted to.
Yeah, I
and
think
Twitch
that's really
wouldn't
weird
know.
that you could say the R slur, but not the C word. That
It
is
just
that's
seems
some
really
vibes.
obvious that Twitch is specifically targeting the word cracker over things like
the C
the R
word?
slur and the N.
The C word.
Sorry. Oh my god, this is so ridiculous that I have to say the C word. Like, yeah, so Twitch is targeting the C word, and instead of targeting words like the R word or any version of like with the suffix of tard at the end, which is also pretty abhorrent in my opinion, like calling people like a quote,
I know what you mean.
like, so if this is the kind of shit that Twitch is specifically targeting, which is white identitarian like insults, cracker specifically meaning whip cracker, referring to the slave trade, it's literally tied into the racism of white people. That's what it's referencing, where we'd rather target white identitarian insults, like insults against white identity, than like even just the R slur and the way it's used throughout the internet, like all over the place. I think it's hypocritical, and I think it's really just like defending the white race. And I think that if we're going to have this conversation, we need to acknowledge that there is a big difference between what Twitch is willing to enforce when it comes to, say, the rights of disabled people or even black people or queer people versus the rights of white people.
Then you said you're familiar with Hassan's position, correct, on this?
Yeah.
Do you agree that the G slur should be bannable?
No, I don't think it should be bannable. The G slur is not, like, it's relevant to a history where Cuban capitalists were kicked out of a country during a revolution, and they're called worms because they literally are like capitalists.
Okay, what makes that okay?
The power that the people had in the, like, it literally is a reference to people who have historically had power, who still maintain some modicum of power and use it to like on the oppressed people who are currently like trying to fight for their rights.
Okay, what about the term Uncle Tom?
I think it's like an acceptable term to use. If, like, again, it's similar to cracker. It's similar to
C word, please.
Oh, sorry. It's similar to the C word. It's similar to the G word. It's also, I guess, should I start calling it the uncle word? Like, I don't know, man.
No,
Like,
they seem to not care about Uncle Tom.
yeah. I would say it's on the same playing field. I mean, it's pretty ugly to see a white person call a black person an Uncle Tom. Like, there's a power difference there that isn't being acknowledged. That is also like the reason why we have words like Uncle Tom is for people like Candace Owen or like people like that who just like support white supremacy outright.
So can I ask a very simple question? You just referenced Candace Owens. Why even reference their race? when you're having a discussion about their political opinion? Why not just talk about their political opinion?
Well, is race relevant when it comes to your political opinion about race?
Not necessarily, no. There are a lot of really racist black people.
Well, yeah, Candace Owens.
Yeah, there's plenty of people like that. So not really, no. It's not really relevant to your opinions about race. Some of the, like, I've met a lot of anti-Asian black people. I've met white people that love Asian people. Some of them, literally going to the point of fetishizing them, which is, in my opinion, racism. Yeah. But, just because you're black doesn't mean you have a different opinion about race.
No, but it does inform your opinion about race, right? Like, so coming from a white background, I used to think that like cops were okay, and I used to think that like cops were a good thing and shit like that, and I don't. Like, abolish police, like defund them, all of that shit, right? But like, your position is informed by where you come from. If you come from an affluent family, if you come from a poor family, if you come from a white family, if you come from a black family.
Well, sure, it can be informed by it, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's relevant when we're shitting on a person for having the opinion. Why are we shitting on? So we're saying, not only is it bad that you have the opinion, but you have a bad opinion and you're black. It's like, wait, why are we shitting on them for being black and having a bad opinion? Just shitting on them for having a bad opinion. Why are you adding the fact that they're black? If you want to point out like some id pool that they're like being tokenized or something, you point out that they're being tokenized in an id pool fashion. Don't shit on them because they're black and have a different opinion.
I guess the way I see it is like, so for example, me coming from a white position, I came from like a background with having extra privilege and not being able to see it. There's a lot of like heavy quotes on this, but like racial color blindness bullshit, right? And like, I think for me, when I say something like I call someone a cracker, or if I refer to someone as an Uncle Tom,
come on, C word, man. It's not that hard.
I wish it wasn't. I'm like literally forgetting all the time. I will try. I'm sorry. C word. C word. C word. C word. C word. I'll be on it. The reason why I would use the C word, or I would use the word Uncle Tom, is because it brings into context like your race, as in like, so you're black and you're literally arguing against your position. That's why people use the word Uncle Tom. It's literally what are you doing to yourself and people like you? And it's the same thing for using the word cracker. It's like you come from a family with a history of power.
It's really not that hard. I think you got to be doing it intentionally at this point.
No, I have like ADD and I'm like talking too fast and I'm not processing it before I say it. The C word.
Okay, so a problem that I have with the statement that you just made is when you say you're arguing against yourself, right? And you're arguing against your self-interests and stuff like that, right? What you view as like somebody's self-interest, or what necessarily leads to somebody's self-interest, and maybe even one that we can agree on, I don't think is something that would require that statement in a derogatory fashion. You know what I mean? Do you understand what I'm saying? I wouldn't refer to somebody in a derogatory fashion about something that they cannot change, that they may be arguing, in my opinion, out of their own self-interest, like for whatever reason that may be. But when you're putting somebody in a position where you say that that their self-interest, and that so confidently that their position will necessarily lead to something out of their self-interest, so much so as that you're going to call them a derogatory term for perpetuating that political stance, I think you're just taking it too far. Not only optically, like when it comes to like getting people to understand your position, but also just like logically. This person doesn't believe it's out of their self-interest. This person doesn't believe these things. You should probably meet them where they're at, and hopefully not appeal to the ideas that you believe like black people should hold. It reminds me of the the low information voters that everybody was calling black people who voted for Biden. What about that? You think that was a problem?
Well, duh. Like, that's literally categorizing like all black people who vote for Biden as low information voters.
Well, do you disagree that Bernie Sanders would have been better for black people by and large?
Yeah, of course he would have. Like, just
Okay.
having medical care for
So then,
all would have solved a
so
lot of
then,
people's.
why couldn't you argue? Why wouldn't you, by your argumentation, say that the people that said that the black people were low information voters were right?
Okay, but are black people? Do black people have a significant modicum of power in this situation? Are they oppressing people by being
Well, that's
quote
not what I
unquote
asked.
low information voter?
What I asked is, are they low information voters? Are they? Should you be able to condemn the action?
That would require me actually thinking that my view is somehow superior than their view and not just different in some way.
Well, hold on. I agree. So why do you think it is superior enough to call Candace Owens and Uncle Tom?
No, okay, you're still missing the power and like oh, how do I explain this in a way that isn't confusing and just my own mind jumbling it up? Like literally, it's it requires you to have like you're arguing for the hegemony, right? Like you're arguing for the group that has the most power to continue holding that power over others. It's I don't think it's wrong to like say punch up, for example, or to like a, or to fight back against people who are literally fighting to
So
keep
let's
a
stay on
hegemonic,
topic
like,
specifically because I think we're getting away from what the statement we just made because we were making progress on that, okay? Which was you stated that you felt it was wrong to be able to shit on quote unquote low information voters that voted, sorry, excuse me, the accused people, black people who were accused of being low information voters as a result of voting for Biden, right? Those people, you felt it was wrong to shit on those people because that would assume that you have a superior position to those black people. But you've already admitted that to your knowledge, Bernie Sanders would be better for black people, right? But isn't it
yeah, but
also
that
to
is
your knowledge that the political positions that Candace Owens pushes would be worse for black people in comparison to even perhaps standard House Democrat positions or
there's a
Bernie
difference
Sanders
between
positions?
there's a difference between calling Candace Owens an Uncle Tom and calling black voters who voted for Joe Biden low information voters, and that difference is whether or not you are fighting for or against a hegemonic power that is oppressing people. That's the difference I'm drawing. You're asking
Would you call
if
every
you
black
ask
conservative an
if
Uncle Tom?
I don't know, maybe to some degree they have Uncle Tom characteristics. Yeah, if you're a conservative, I don't think you should like it's an innately white supremacist position. I don't know what to tell you.
Okay. So your definition of like whether or your criteria for whether or not you can combine somebody's race with their position being wrong stems entirely with whether or not they are perpetuating white supremacy, not whether or not their position, in your opinion, does not is actually incorrect. So,
Yeah,
in
basically.
relation, yes, is what you're saying.
Basically, yeah.
Okay, why?
Do you want white supremacists? Like we
No,
should.
no, no. That's not
You're
what
an
I'm asking. What?
anti-fascist.
Sorry, allow me to be more specific. Why is it wrong for me to, for instance, say that all black people who voted for Joe Biden are low information voters?
I don't know. That's up to you, man. If you're a black person and you want to call other black people low information voters, I think it's pretty
No, no, no.
ugly.
Let's assume
like,
like a white person.
well, because it stems from white supremacy. It stems from the idea that white people know better than black people and they know how they should vote. That's what it stems from.
But it doesn't work that way if I'm black. It just magically doesn't stem from white supremacy if I'm black. You know,
Okay.
black people can.
Black people can be white supremacists as well. You said this earlier.
Yeah, so why are we essentializing the race when we're talking about an Uncle Tom? Why don't we talk about white supremacy? What we're actually having a discussion about. You're a
Is
white
calling someone
supremacist
Uncle
that
Tom
also happens
equivalent
to
to
be
calling-
black.
Is calling someone an Uncle Tom equivalently like related to calling someone a low information voter? Is one as extreme as the other?
No, I would argue that we should never call somebody an Uncle Tom. I think you can call people low information voters all the time. I would call a lot of conservatives low information voters.
Okay, yeah. So if I was to call a white conservative low information voter, that wouldn't be a big deal, right?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I would. The reason why I would say it's not a big deal in relation to the way that it was used in the Bernie Sanders situation is they called black people low information voters because they believed that black people had an inferior position relative to what they assumed that the black people were stupid for voting for Biden.
So we agree on this. I don't know, like, what you're trying to
What
get
do we
at.
what do we agree on? Because we don't agree. I want to know in your mind why those white people who said that black people by and large were low information voters for voting for Biden, why those people were doing a bad thing. Because when you previously described why you believed it was a bad thing, it had applied to the Candace Owens situation. You believed that it was white people stating that they had a superior position to black people, and that superior position then justified being able to make a racialized comment.
Okay, so does the term low information voters only refer to black people? Is
In
it a
in the
racialized?
context that we brought it up, yes.
Okay, but you brought it into a different context when you said, "What about me calling, or you, for example, calling a conservative a low information voter?"
I
So
didn't
like
bring
you're
it into
switching the
that context. You asked me whether or not it would be racialized if you said that, if low information voter as an entire idea is a bad thing. And this is consistent with my idiot take. No, I just call them dumb.
Yeah. So I don't know why we're arguing about low information voters. It's really something
The
I don't
reason
care
why we're arguing with low information voters is because it seems to be a hole in your reasoning. That you don't really have an argument against the white people that called all the black people that voted for Biden low information voters. You don't really
Yes,
have
I
an
do.
argument.
It's literally because you are taking a white supremacist position where you are assuming that as a white person you know more than them, and that
Right.
that white.
And how are you not doing that when you say Candace Owens is an Uncle Tom? Yikes, homie.
So Candace Owens literally argues for white supremacy on a regular basis. Yes.
I would say so from my perspective, sure, yeah.
Okay. So is she arguing to support the hegemony of white supremacists?
I would argue, yeah, sure.
Okay, then I think it's fine to bring into context, like to use terms like Uncle Tom or the C word or the G word.
Wait.
It's not,
So then you've now
I wouldn't call Candace Owens a C word, obviously. That doesn't make any freaking sense. But, like, you know what I mean. I mean, you could. I guess she kind of is if you consider, like, like, like you'd consider a black slave driver back in the day or something. Like, it's not, I don't know. Like, I guess you could call her a cracker or a C word, sorry, if you wanted to.
I don't even understand. Do you not think that the C word is only applied to white people?
It's referred to. It's not exclusively for fucking white people. It's for people. It's
When has
literally
it
whip
ever
cracker.
been? It's not, actually. That's actually a pretty common misnomer. It seems like at this point that was perpetuated actually by his son. It's kind of funny. There's somebody can bust out the NPR shit or whatever, but it dates farther back than fucking America's existed. But anyway, the if you want to reference the if you want to, I would love it. When has the C word ever been used for a non-white person? I don't think I've ever seen that in my entire life.
I don't know, man. I can't provide you with an example just on this one instance. Like I said, I do think it's related to the cracking of the whip, and like you have said already in this conversation, as you've already said in this conversation, these terms change. Like you said that you think the N word could be somehow acceptable to use someday.
Yeah, for sure. It could be reclaimed and then normalized. Yeah.
So you think that the definition of these words or the understanding of these words shift over time, right?
We objectively they do. Unless you want to play some ultimate skeptic thing, they objectively do.
No.
Correct.
Objectively, they do. You're right about that. And what I'm pointing out is we use the word cracker to refer to people as whip crackers.
C word. And no, it's again like that's we could disagree on that, but it seems like the etymology of the word might stem from a different source.
But how do we use it colloquially today? How do people understand it?
Oh, they just white person bad. That's literally, if you disagree with that, I'm sorry, you're lost. You're completely lost. It is literally just a white person that you do not like. If you do not agree with that, you need to go outside more, homie. That is the way that it is used. Same with the H word for white people. It's the same exact thing.
Is that also TOS? Is the
I
H
have
word
no
true?
idea, but I'm gonna keep it safe. I'm gonna keep it above the cuff.
Oh boy. Okay. Um, wait. Can you refer to a bar then? Like, you know,
Well,
a
hold on.
honky
I want
tonk?
to. I want to get back to the claim
Like,
that you keep getting around.
oh, sorry,
How
I
is
got distracted by the H
okay?
word.
So,
Yeah,
so
what was the
yeah.
question?
Okay, so the original statement that I felt like you have not sufficiently answered is when I ask you why it was wrong for the white people to say that the black people were low information voters, right? For saying that everybody who, all the black people who didn't vote for Bernie were low info voters, right? That you said that it is a white supremacist idea that these white people have superior information and knowledge to those black people. How are you not doing the exact same thing when you call Candace Owens and Uncle Tom? You are assuming that you have superior information.
At this point, when we're referring specifically to Candace Owens, I do think that I have superior information. I do think that being anti-racist is a superior position to being white supremacist. I think that's
Right.
like,
And then,
I'm
okay,
willing
so
to say that that is an act. Like,
if you, yeah, my point. If you're allowed to do that, why am I not allowed to? Let's say I'm a white dude. Why am I not allowed to call every black person that voted for Joe Biden a low information voter? You're able to draw the line there. Why can't I draw my line here? Logically suss out why your line is superior to my line.
I guess my line, like, is one that first off has been set by it historically has also just been set by black people as well. Like, black people have set the standard of Uncle Tom, for example. Like, that's like, it's different from white people setting the standard of, oh, I get to call you whatever the hell I want. And like, if we're talking about the low information voters things,
Wait,
for
you said
example,
you're white though, right? Do you think
I
that
didn't.
do you think that black people were cool with white people calling them Uncle Toms?
It's a term. I mean that it was a
If you're
term
gonna
like it wasn't.
if you're gonna make an
I got a
appeal
question
to like
here. I don't
black
actually
people
know.
in the
Okay,
past being
I'm gonna
making
ask you a question
using the
here.
term Uncle
I'm
Tom,
gonna assume
then
that you have more information than me, so I'm gonna ask you a question here. What is, like, was Uncle Tom started by white people or black people as a word to use?
to
I
my
actually don't know
knowledge,
the
by
answer.
and large, it was black people.
Okay, and that's the assumption I'm working off as well.
Okay.
So, and the reason why I'm working off why that assumption is important to me is because I'm assuming that because it's a word that black people have specifically used for themselves to apply to Uncle Tom's, and I've heard other black people, not specifically you, obviously you don't stand by this, but I've heard other black people say that they don't give a shit if you call other black people Uncle Tom's, and maybe I'm wrong that that's a normal position.
Wait.
I could be wrong, but like,
What? Wait. Then, if we are appealing to this, what gives you the right as a white person to say Uncle Tom? We just established that black people could say it. If we want to even agree with that, black people can say it. What gives you the right to say it?
it's not about. Okay, I don't know, man. I was going to say, like, I was gonna say, it literally is. I just feel like we're not connecting on this point. What I'm trying to say is, like, black people have, like, you're one black person out of many. I've
Sure.
heard many other black people say that using the term Uncle Tom, white people can use the word Uncle Tom. I didn't realize, like, I did not heard a lot of black people say the opposite. If it's a commonly, like, I don't know if that's me, like, misreading,
Okay.
like,
So then you would.
social situation, but like, I have an understanding that most black people think it's acceptable to use the word Uncle Tom.
So then you'd be cool with like white people saying the N-word as long as they've gotten the pass from like a lot of their black friends.
Not so explicitly. Like, the N word is different from Uncle Tom. It literally has different, like, historical background.
Well, your
and has
argument
different-
for the use of the term is simple. You've heard a lot of people say that X group
okay,
of people
dude.
can say it.
You really seem to like to ignore the historical context of these words, and I don't know why.
You know what? That's pretty comical considering if I'd be very willing to bet that the historical context of Uncle Tom is almost everybody that used it in the past would not be okay with white people using it.
Okay, fine. Then maybe white people shouldn't use it. I'm willing to see, like.
Hey, we could shake hands on that because I don't think anybody should be using it. So that's a W.
All right. Like, if I receive new information, I will change my mind. I'm letting you know. Like, And if I'm told by a bunch of like if most black people are like, hey, don't fucking use it, sure, fine.
I got a couple black people in chat. Throw it up if you don't want this white guy using Uncle Tom.
Fine, I'll just stop using it. It's probably safer anyways. Fuck. But I won't stop saying the C word. Like I don't think there's anything wrong with attacking white people for like supporting a hegemonic white supremacist state. Like fuck it. Like that's not really worth fighting. Like I don't want to fight against. Like I don't want to fight for people who identify with being white to such a degree where they're shook when we refer to like the slavery of black people and like how white people are being racist. Like I just think it's ridiculous.
I mean, I don't know who asked, but okay. I don't know anybody. I don't know why you even said that in the first place. I don't know who's defending that. There has been many white people that have been prosecuted for the way they look. For instance, Jewish people.
Not for being white. Not for being white.
Hold on.
Not for being white.
Do you think that I don't like white people?
Yeah, I legitimately believe you have some white guilt.
I love all my white family and shit. Like, what the fuck?
It genuinely, I think a lot of white people that take this opinion have quite a bit of white guilt. That's my opinion on it. I am asking you just a very simple question. Two people meet for the first time. How does racism ensue? You want to know how easy this question is to answer for me? One person makes fun of another, the way the other person looks based on their skin color, or like some racial characteristic they attribute to that group of people. It's that simple. And then boom, you're racist. You're doing a racism. Wow, that's wild.